Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Cameron and I'm the HR guy. And in today's video, we're going to talk about 3 of the biggest mistakes that I see candidates make often in relation to how they're answering interview questions. And we're going to talk about the mistakes that people make, and we're going to give you a few tips on what you can do to avoid those mistakes in future interviews. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, first of all, most of these mistakes are made for a few reasons. One is people are nervous, and when you're nervous, your brain kind of freezes up, and maybe you don't think as clearly as you normally would, or you don't perform as well as you would when you're not under pressure. So some of that is just nerves. Some of it is they didn't prepare very well. So they didn't do a lot of their research. They didn't prepare on how to answer questions. They didn't research the company or the position very well and know how their skills and abilities relate to that position and how to answer specific questions related to that. Okay, a couple reasons people usually make these mistakes is one, just people get nervous. They don't do well in interviews. They have maybe some anxiety when it comes to interviewing, and therefore, their brain kind of freezes up, and they just don't do well under pressure, and therefore they're not able to maybe articulate their answers as completely as they would like to, and they forget things that they had already planned on saying and prepared for. So one of that is just practice. Practice is going to help alleviate some of that nervousness and anxiousness as you go into an interview, and being well prepared, really doing your research about the company, research about the job, looking at how your skills, ability, and experience relate to that position, and specifically the duties that you're going to be assigned to do, and preparing for questions that are normally asked during an interview. So if you can get yourself practice in those areas, then you're going to be less anxious and be able to perform better under pressure. Second reason is people just don't prepare. They don't plan on how to answer questions. They go into the interview and just feel like they can wing it. Maybe they're comfortable in the interview setting, so they don't spend as much time looking over the job description and looking at the specific duties that this position is going to be asking them to do. They don't read about the company. They don't look at their own resume and look at how their skills and abilities and experience would apply to this position. And therefore, they're not as prepared. And sometimes they get questions that they weren't expecting, and it throws them off, and they don't do quite as well. So, one is being anxious, and one is not being prepared for the interview. And these are 2 things that you can work on to get better at. Okay, mistake number 1 is you just don't share enough information when you answer a question. You may answer exactly what the question is asking, and I've done that in the past, but you don't give any supporting details. You don't give any examples of things that you've done, your skills, abilities, work experience, and how that would relate to the question or to the position that you're applying for. The interviewer wants to see not only that you understand the technical aspects of this position, but also that you can relate your experience to what you're going to be doing for them in that organization. So you want to be able to be prepared to have examples that you can share that relate to whatever the question is asking. And oftentimes this can happen again when you're anxious or you're nervous and you're just wanting to answer the question, and you prepared yourself, so you kind of know the technical parts of that job, and so you just answer and think, okay, got through that question. But you need to be ready to expand on your answer a little bit. All right, mistake number 2 is you talk too much. And that really sometimes, again, is related to nerves. You want to make sure you're answering the question well and that you're giving a lot of details. So oftentimes you may actually answer the question, but then you're giving all this extra information that may or may not be relevant to what the question is asking. Sometimes people will say the same answer and they'll just kind of cycle it through, and they'll say it a little different, maybe 2 or 3 different times. And the issue with that is if you're not kind of concise and there's some logic to your answer can get confusing to the interviewer, and the real answer can get lost in all this extra stuff that you're saying. So you want to make sure that you're having some good flow to your answer, and that it's concise enough that it answers the question and gives some supporting details, but doesn't continue to ramble on and go on and then get confusing because you've said way too much. And again, some of that's usually related to nerves and wanting to really perform well. So you want to make sure that you kind of practice on how to answer a question and also give a few supporting examples to show that you have the experience and the ability to transfer what you've done into that new position. Okay, mistake number 3 is you don't even actually answer the question. You maybe didn't plan for that kind of question and it threw you off and you didn't understand, either you didn't understand what the question is really asking or you don't have any experience in that area. And I will tell you, if you don't have experience in an area, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not familiar with that. I haven't ever done that before. But I think this is something that I've done in the past that might relate, and then you share something that you've done that you feel might relate. But if you just start answering with random things that you think are close to what they're looking for, they could be either close or they could be way off, and the interviewer is going to figure out pretty quickly that you didn't really know the answer to that question. And oftentimes this can also lead to people rambling on because they're trying to say a lot of information, so they think that if I say enough, eventually I'm going to answer the question. So they'll just kind of throw a bunch of information out there that some might relate and some might not, hoping that enough of it sticks. The other thing that can happen is you could have a 2 or 3 part question and you may answer 1 or 2 parts, but you don't answer the third part. And so therefore you're not really answering the question completely, and the interviewer is going to be left like, well, yeah, they knew part of it, but they didn't really answer this part at all. It's okay to ask them to repeat the question so that you can make sure you answer it completely, and kind of be prepared to really listen first to what the interviewer is asking so you make sure you understand the scope of the whole question before you begin to answer. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. 1, you talk too little. 2, you talk too much. 3, you don't answer the question at all. Now these are 3 mistakes that can be easily avoided if you prepare and practice. Prepare by reading the job description, knowing what specific duties that they're going to ask you to do that relates to that job. Reviewing your resume, looking for ways that you can share your abilities and experience and how they can transfer into this new position and show that you're a good fit and that you have the ability to do that job well. The other thing is to practice. Practice answering commonly asked questions. Practice answering questions in a concise but thorough way. Make sure you really understand what the question is asking, and so that you can give a thorough answer to that question without rambling on, and give relevant examples that will relate to that type of question. If you do those things, then you'll be much better prepared and have a much better chance of having success in future interviews. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe button, and also share it with others who may find this information helpful as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.